In August of 2024, a single cast iron skillet crossed the auction block and sold for $10,000. Not a rare painting, not a gold coin, a frying pan, the same kind of heavy black skillet that might be sitting in your grandmother's cabinet right now, buried under a stack of nonstick pans that nobody uses. Most people would have handed it to a thrift store for $2 and never thought about it again. Instead, it changed hands for the price of a used car. Here is what almost nobody will tell you. The most valuable cast iron on Earth was made in America between the 1880s and the 1950s, and then the craft that made it disappeared forever. Today, I am going to show you the 5 brands worth hunting for, the exact marks that separate a $10 pan from a $10,000 one, and why you should check your family's kitchen before it is too late. If you walk into any store today and pick up a brand new cast iron skillet, it will feel almost identical to the one your grandmother owned. Same black color, same heavy iron, same basic shape. And that similarity is exactly why millions of families throw away small fortunes without ever realizing it. Because the truth is that not all cast iron is created equal. The pan you buy new today is a rough, heavy, sand-textured casting stamped out by the thousands. The pan your grandmother cooked on was something completely different. It was hand-finished, machine-polished until the cooking surface was as smooth as glass, and cast so precisely that it weighed a fraction of what modern pans weigh. For roughly 70 years, a handful of American foundries competed to build the lightest, smoothest, most beautiful cookware in the world. They sat in small towns you have probably never heard of: Erie, Pennsylvania; Sidney, Ohio; Wapak, Ohio; Piqua, Ohio. These were not faceless corporations. They were family foundries obsessed with quality, and they produced pieces so well made that collectors now pay thousands of dollars to own them. But here is the part that should make you get up and check your cabinets. Most people cannot tell the difference between a common pan worth $20 and a rare piece worth several thousand. The clues are hiding in plain sight on the bottom of the pan, and once you know what to look for, you will never see an old skillet the same way again. To understand why a piece of old iron can be worth more than a month's rent, you have to understand how it was made and why nobody makes it that way anymore. In the golden age of American cast iron, foundries did not just pour metal into a mold and call it finished. After the raw pan came out of the sand, workers put it on a wheel and machined the cooking surface until it was mirror smooth. That polished surface is the single biggest reason old pans cook better than new ones. Food releases cleanly. Seasoning bonds evenly. The iron was also poured thin and light because a skilled foundry could control the casting precisely enough to avoid wasting metal. A vintage skillet can weigh half as much as a modern one of the same size, and it heats faster and more evenly because of it. The most respected of all these foundries was Griswold, based in Erie, Pennsylvania, which began making cookware back in the late 1800s. For generations, Griswold was the name that serious cooks trusted. But quality like that cost money and labor, and by the middle of the 20th century, cheaper competition was closing in. In 1957, Griswold sold out. Within a few years, the Griswold name landed in the hands of its great rival, the Wagner Company of Sidney, Ohio, and that was the beginning of the end. Over the following decades, the Griswold and Wagner names were passed from one corporation to the next like a used car, eventually landing under a conglomerate called General Housewares. Each time the name changed hands, the machining stopped, the quality dropped, and the craft was hollowed out to cut costs. The pans kept the famous names on the bottom, but the soul was gone, and that is why the pieces made before those takeovers, the pans stamped in the golden age, are the ones collectors now chase. Because the moment you understand that the good stuff stopped being made, you stop asking what a new pan costs, and you start asking a very different question. Which of these old pans is actually the treasure, and how do you tell them apart? So let us walk through the 5 brands worth hunting for, starting with the one that sits on the throne. The first is Griswold. If you find a pan with the name Griswold on the bottom, stop and pay attention. The most common version has a large cross inside a circle, and even ordinary Griswold skillets in good condition sell for well over $100. But Griswold made pieces across many decades, and the older and rarer the logo, the higher the value climbs. The earliest ones simply say Erie in block letters, and those can be worth many hundreds to a few $1,000s each. The second brand is Wagner Ware, made in Sidney, Ohio. Wagner was Griswold's great competitor, and its cookware was nearly as fine. Look for the words Wagner Ware and a stylized Sidney marking on the bottom. Wagner pieces are more common than Griswold, but the larger and more unusual sizes still command strong money. A rare Wagner in a large size like the number 13 has sold for nearly $1,000. The third brand is Wapak, from the small town of Wapakoneta, Ohio. Wapak is a collector favorite for one reason. Some of its pans carry the profile of a Native American head as the maker's mark, and those Indian head pieces are among the most sought-after cast iron in the entire hobby. The fourth brand is Favorite, specifically the line known as Favorite Piqua Ware, made in Piqua, Ohio. Favorite operated for only a limited stretch of years, which makes its pieces genuinely scarce, and scarcity is what drives collector prices. The fifth category is the oldest of all, the earliest Erie and pre-1900 pieces marked with what collectors call a gate mark. That is a raised scar across the bottom left behind by the primitive casting method of the 1800s. A gate mark is a fingerprint of true age, and gate-marked pieces from the right maker can be worth a small fortune. And skillets are only part of the story. Some of the most valuable cast iron ever made was never a frying pan at all. These foundries made ornate baking pans called gem pans, the old-fashioned ancestor of the muffin tin, in dozens of shapes. Certain rare gem pan patterns, cast in the shape of hearts, stars, or small animals, sell for thousands of dollars because so few survived. The same is true of cornstick pans, tiny salesman sample skillets no bigger than your palm, and oversized hotel skillets in odd numbers like the number 13 or the number 20. In cast iron, the strange sizes are often the valuable ones because the foundries made far fewer of them. Now here is where it gets serious. Among all Griswold pieces, there is one that collectors treat like a holy grail. It is called the Spider Skillet, an early Erie era pan that carries a spider and web design as its trademark. In August of 2024, one of these spider skillets sold at a public auction for $10,000. That is a documented sale, not a rumor. And another example has changed hands online for nearly $12,600 for one frying pan. But this is exactly where you need to be careful, because the internet is full of wild claims. You will see articles insisting that a single skillet sold for $20,000 or more. When you go looking for the actual auction record to prove those numbers, it tends to vanish into thin air, and that is the difference between a rumor and a receipt. The pieces that truly sell for thousands are real, but the eye-popping headlines are often inflated just to grab your attention. So the smart move is not to daydream about $20,000. The smart move is to stop guessing and start inspecting. So let us get practical, because this is the part that could actually put money in your pocket. The next time you are in an older relative's kitchen, or at an estate sale, or standing over a box of dusty pans at a yard sale, here is exactly what to do. First, pick the pan up and feel its weight. If it feels surprisingly light for its size, that is a good sign, because the finest old iron was cast thin and precise. Second, run your fingertips across the cooking surface. If it feels slick and almost glassy, you are likely holding a piece from the Golden Age. If it is rough and pebbled like fine sandpaper, it is almost certainly a modern casting worth very little. Third, and most important, turn the pan over and read the bottom. This is where the maker signed its work. Look for the names we covered. Griswold with its cross and circle, Wagner Ware with its Sidney marking, the Wapak Indian head, Favorite from Piqua, or the simple word Erie. Note the size number as well, usually a single number from 3 up to 20, and look for that raised gate mark line that signals the oldest and most collectible pieces. Now, a dose of honesty, because guessing is how people get hurt. The overwhelming majority of old skillets you find will not be 5-figure treasures. A typical Wagner or a common Griswold in decent shape might bring anywhere from $50 to a few $100s, which is still far more than the $2 a thrift store would give you. The rare pieces, the early Erie logos, the Wapak Indian heads, the odd sizes, and the gem pans are the ones that leap into the thousands. And the true unicorns, like that Erie spider skillet, are the ones that climb into 5 figures at auction. but you will never know which one you are holding unless you look. One more warning before you go hunting. Where there is money, there are fakes. Reproduction Griswold and counterfeit Wapak. Indian pieces do exist, and they are made to fool the untrained eye. The tells are usually in the details. A fake often has fuzzy, poorly defined lettering, a surface that is rough where it should be smooth, or a logo that sits slightly wrong compared to the genuine article. When a piece looks like it could be worth serious money, that is the moment to slow down, photograph the markings, and compare them against a trusted collector reference before you buy or sell. That skillet that sold for $10,000 did not come from a museum. It came from the same kind of ordinary American kitchen that exists in millions of homes. Somebody once used it to fry eggs and never had the slightest idea what it was worth. And here is the final twist that makes this whole story so remarkable. The reason these old pans are worth so much today is the exact same reason the companies that made them went under. They were too well made, they lasted too long. A skillet built to last 100 years does not create repeat customers, and it cannot compete on price with a cheap, rough casting stamped out in seconds. The craftsmanship that doomed these foundries in the marketplace is the very thing that makes their survivors priceless today. So the treasure is not rare because it was fancy. It is rare because they stopped making things this good. The golden age of American cast iron is over, and it is not coming back. The foundries are closed, the polishing machines are scrapped, and the skilled hands that made those mirror-smooth surfaces are gone. But the pans themselves are nearly indestructible, which means the treasures are still out there, scattered across kitchen cabinets and basement shelves and estate sales all over the country, waiting to be recognized. The people who profit are simply the ones who bother to turn the pan over and read the bottom. So before you donate that heavy old skillet, before you let it rust away in the garage, take 2 minutes and check it. Your grandmother may have left you far more than a frying pan. If you found this useful, hit subscribe for more stories about the hidden value sitting right under your nose.